Hey guys, I'm gonna make a traditional cake. I'm gonna start by making a yellow butter cake. This yellow butter cake is gonna go into 2 prepared pans, and then I'm going to make a 3 to 4 layer cake depending on how I feel. I'm feeling 4, but we'll see when I actually get there. So to get started, let's make this yellow butter cake. I'm gonna start with 240 grams of butter, 260 grams of sugar, and a pinch of salt. I'm gonna cream this until it's light and fluffy. So I'm gonna start on low because I don't wanna wear it, and then I'm gonna go up high and keep it on high till it's fluffy. Starting to look fluffy, I'm just gonna scrape it down and keep going. All right, it is starting to look like something all its own, which is awesome. Let's scrape this down and we'll slowly incorporate the eggs. So 1 egg. It's looking pretty good, still a little bit lumpy, so I'm going to scrape down the sides another time. I'm going to turn it on medium-high to get the lumps out, and then we're going to slowly start incorporating our other ingredients. Alright, you want to be careful after you add the eggs, because when you add the eggs, if you mix it too hard and heavy or for too long, you actually can split the eggs. I've had a student do that with cookies before. I had never seen it in my life, but the cookies were weird and gritty. We figured it out, we tried it out, we saw what we could do, and ultimately we ended up throwing them out. There was nothing we could do. But I've done it enough so that this is one good mixture. Now I have 300 grams of cake flour and 12 grams of baking powder, and I have 300 grams of milk and 4 grams of vanilla. So I'm going to add my dry and my liquid in 5 parts. I'm going to start and end with flour. So I'm going to go flour, milk, flour, milk, flour. That ensures that you've got a really good texture. If you end in liquid, you might not have the best texture, so always end in flour. So that being said, I'm going to do 1/3 of my flour. There you go. Let's go low because I don't want to wear it. Okay, I'm going to scrape down between every addition I do. So that's addition number 1. My first scrape down. Just make sure it's all well mixed, and I'm going to add half of my milk. I'm going to scrape them again. You see how weird and kind of splotchy that texture is? That's why we added the flour last, to prevent a weird splotchy texture in our cake. Alright, so now addition number 2 of flour, number 3 of putting things in. So I'm going to do half of what I have left here. Start slow so I don't wear it. Alright, now I'm going to scrape it down. So this is my 3rd addition. Again, once you add the flour, you get a much nicer and easier to work with texture. And now let's ruin that by adding our milk and making it weird and splotchy again. Same thing as last, it's got kind of this weird split texture about it, and that's okay because we're going to add the last of our flour and fix that texture completely. There we go, that's our cake batter. I'm just gonna give it one more stir to make sure I got it all in, and it looks really good. And I'm gonna put it probably about 60 to 70% of the way up. As you'll notice, I only lined the bottom and I didn't do anything to the sides. If you choose, you could butter and flour the sides. I'm just gonna leave them plain, and As it cools, it should come off. If it doesn't come off, I'll just run a knife through it. Just trying to get it even. I'm gonna throw this in the oven for about 25 to 45 minutes, depending on your oven. I'll show you when I take them out. So my butter cakes are done. When I top them, they feel some resistance, so we know that they're cooked. I've poked them with a stick, and the skewer has come up clean. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna let them cool in their pans for a little bit. They should release from the sides, and then I'm gonna put them on a rack for the rest of the night. And I'm gonna let it cool completely. So in my instance, that's gonna be overnight. So tomorrow I'm gonna put these together and I'm gonna make some cakes, and I'll show you how. Our cakes have rested overnight, and I'm gonna cut them into layers. I have decided, because I've got such evenly baked cakes, that I'm gonna make a 4-layer cake. It's not any different than a 2-layer or a 3-layer. I'm just gonna have a taller one. It's not a big deal. So the first thing I need to do is I need to cut these. I need to make sure that when I'm ready to cut these, that I have no icing around me. One of the greatest things that you can do to mess up a cake is to get crumbs in your icing. So the first step is to prep your cake far away from your icing. My icing is far away. So I'm gonna put my top one right in center, and I'm gonna have a long serrated knife, one enough that I can saw through. I'm on a turntable, but you don't have to be on a turntable. I've done this many ways. I've done it on a plate on an upside down bowl. You just need to raise it up a little bit. I've done it on a cake tier, but for the ease of it, I've got a turny one. So I'm gonna find kind of the natural corner here. And I'm gonna keep my wrist rigid, and I'm gonna go in about 1 inch. And then I'm gonna spin the cake while keeping my wrist in the same position and just go back and forth, and that's it. It's the easiest way to keep it nice and straight. Once you get to the end, just make your way through. I've got a beautiful cut here, nice and even. And now I'm gonna turn this into 2 layers. The leftover piece I can do lots with, but I'll probably just freeze it and save it for rum balls. Okay, so now I gotta guesstimate what the middle looks like. And same thing, I'm gonna keep my wrist rigid, and I'm just gonna go in about 1 inch, and then I'm just gonna spin while keeping my wrist in the same position. Okay. So layer 1 looks pretty good. Layer 2 looks pretty good. Now let's do this with the next piece. So these crummy guys, I'm gonna keep way the heck away from everyone else. All of my icing is gonna be gone. And now my entire station is riddled with crumbs, and I have to clean it up like crazy before I even bring my icing over here. So let me put these aside and I'll start cleaning. So I've gathered my mise en place, and I just wanted to show you what I have in order to make this cake decorating successful. So I have icing, soft spreadable icing in a piping bag with no tip. I've got soft spreadable icing with a star tip. I've got a separate bowl of nice clean icing. I have 2 bowls for crumb icing, so I'm gonna save this one for any icing that comes off that has crumbs on it, and this one for stuff that looks relatively clean. You never know when it could save your butt. I have extra piping bags in case I need them. I have cake spatulas, a smaller one and a bigger one. I might only need the smaller one because it's a small cake, but who knows, I've got a bigger one if need be. I've got a filling ready, and I've got a garnish for on top. So I'm pretty well prepared for all of this. In normal life, I would put my cake on a cake board, but I thought I'd do something that's accessible for everyone, and I'll put it on a plate. I'll still be able to decorate it nicely. I'll still be able to clean up the outside of the plate, make sure there's no crumbs, but everyone has plates, so let's decorate it on a plate. So let's move some of our stuff aside. I'm going to leave this up for dirty icing, and I'm going to get my one spatula there. And I don't need this the whole time, so I'll keep it with me for now, and I'll just move aside my icings. I will need them and you'll see how. Okay, so layer 1, I'm gonna center it in the plate. I'm not too concerned about the crumbs because I'm gonna make sure I have no crumbs in my bowl of icing, but crumbs are inevitable. I can't really control this. So the first thing you do is you moisten your cake with a simple syrup or an alcohol you like, or liqueur, or juice, depending on what type of cake is, but I've got a simple syrup here. My hummingbirds needed it anyway, so I thought I'd make a bunch. Okay, first layer, simple syrup. I'm gonna take my non-tip icing here, and I'm just gonna go around the outside. And sometimes I like to do another circle on the inside. When you cut it, it looks really pretty. And I think I'll do that every second one. And now in these spaces, I'm gonna put my filling. Then I'm gonna take one of my top pieces and put it on. And as I put it on, I'm gonna make sure it's even. I'm gonna come from the side, make sure it's on well, give it a spin. And that looks pretty good to me. This top is a little bigger, so I'll just push it down on this side so it's nice and even. So same thing, once I'm happy with its placement, I'm going to brush some more of the syrup on top. Then I'll do another icing on the outside. And this one, remember I didn't put the line in, so I'm just gonna put some across the whole piece. Again, less is more, I don't need too much. All right. I'm gonna take the next like this. If they're a little uneven, what I would often do is set it intentionally. So I put my thicker end on a piece where I thought looked a little thin, because then it's going to even itself out anyway. So I'm going to check the placement, make sure I like where everything's going, make sure it all looks good to me, make sure it's even. Okay, looks good. Now I'm going to do my last little bit of syrup. I don't put syrup on my top layer because I find it makes it hard to ice when it's all soggy. Put this aside and save it for the hummingbirds. And this one, I'm gonna do the same thing as the first, where I'm gonna have two circles. And then when it cuts, it's gonna be really pretty. So 1, 2. Now I'm gonna take my last piece, and I like to have the upside down on the top because that makes for a very smooth icing application. And let's straighten it out, make sure it looks good to me, make sure I'm happy with the placement, spin around, make sure there's no lopsidedness, because this is kind of my last time to be able to play with this. Okay, it looks pretty good. What I'm gonna do is pick up this whole thing and brush all the crumbs off my plate, or any syrup that's spilled or anything else, before I get started with icing. As soon as I get started with icing, I'm terrified of crumbs. Now I'm wary of them, but terrified when you start with icing. So let's brush this all off, and then we'll start with icing. All right, so there are a couple of different strategies. One is I can just go gung-ho and decorate it as is, but another option for us would be to create a dirty icing layer. So we'll put some icing on thin, make sure all the crumbs are captured within that, and that's why I need my crumb bowl. Then I'm gonna pop it in the fridge for about 10 minutes to firm up before I put a nice application of icing on top. So when I ice, I like to start on the top, and you have to be very careful not to let it lift after you've put it on. You've got to kind of spread from the top down. I've got some there, and then I'm gonna take this, I'm just gonna spin it around to start my dirty icing application. Okay. So I'm gonna start, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna start from the side. So I'm gonna take my long offset spatula and I'm just gonna come along and scrape it on the outsides. Again, remember this is my dirty ice, so I'm not too concerned about crumbs on my icing. Okay. If I have any giant holes, I'm going to take this dirty icing here and come along and scrape it. I think I'm relatively lucky about holes though. There we go, here's some. I'll get a paper towel, clean up the outside, and then I'm going to start at the top. Certain things you can really tell how important cleaning as you go is, and decorating desserts is one of them. When you have delicate things like icings or anything else, it's very easy to make it look horrible. So clean as you go, make really nice things. So now I'm going to go from the top over. So I don't want my icing pile to lift up. That's how I'm going to get crumbs in it. I know this is my dirty icing, and I just used a dirty edge there. But I want to keep in good practice, and it's very good practice for you to make sure that you're being as clean as possible every time you do everything. Okay, so I want to spread it until it meets the icing that's coming up, like so. Perfect. So now I'm just gonna spin it around. So the dirty icing on my cake is set. So I can touch it and it's not gonna follow me. It's still soft, so I can definitely like ruin it at this point, but I've got a good amount of icing on here and I'm okay to continue on. So what I'd like to do is put a little bit more on top and then I'll spread that down to the sides. I'm gonna use my smaller one because I wanna be a little more precise. Now I should have little to no risk about getting, any crumbs on my icing. If you notice the little bumps on my icing, it looks like I made my icing too fluffy, which for what I'm planning at the end is not the end of the world. If that happens to you, don't stress. I'm absolutely not stressed about it, but I am keeping it in mind. I'm going to use a tool to put designs on the side, so I'm not too concerned about how the side looks. I just want it to be even. So it's more or less even. I'm just going to take my big long offset spatula and just make sure it's fairly even as I go around. And it doesn't have to be perfect because I am going to use a tool to clean it up at the end. Just want to make sure I don't have big giant holes as I go. There we go. The tool I'm going to use is a special cake decorating tool. And you can 100% use things like a fork. You don't even have to use these at all. So I'm just going to come along and just spin it around and I should get a really cool decoration from doing that. This is the sort of time when you realize that the plate you chose is making your life harder than easier, but that's okay. There we go, the outside looks cool. I'm going to make sure my inside looks nice, and then I'm going to show you the easiest way. So rather than go down like I did earlier, I'm going up. I'm going to show you the easiest way to make this look like a professional cake. So very carefully smooth all of this out as best as you can, but don't overthink it and don't stress. If you look carefully at professionally decorated cakes, they definitely have seams and they have all sorts of things on them, so it's not that big of a deal if it's not perfect in your eyes. Okay. Now I'm going to take my star tip, and this is the most common way, the easiest way to make a traditional cake. I'm going to put stars or florets or whatever I choose as I get there. I usually end up doing like a nice seashell shape. I like to work in the shape of a clock, so make sure this is nice and centered. And the first things I'm going to do are 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And I'm going to spin it, and I'm going to do 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And then I have to do my in-between numbers afterwards. You'll see as I go. It's actually mind-blowingly cool. So 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. When you pipe, you want to have your piping bag straight up and down. 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Now I'm going to come in between and do 2. So this will be 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. This is my 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Doesn't that look amazing? Now with my remainder of the star tip, I'm just going to clean up the bottom where the cake touches the plate. And I'm just going to do a little swirly boo. You'll see as it comes around. So as far as a plain white cake goes, this actually looks quite nice, very professional, very easy to do, very little effort. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it outstanding, and I'm going to take some strawberries. I'm going to leave the greens on because I love the green, and I'm going to make some garnish. What I like about a strawberry is the inside of a strawberry looks like a heart, so I always garnish with the inside out. So I'm going to put that at 12 o'clock. 6 o'clock and 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And there you go. There is my unbelievably easy how to decorate a cake. This is 4 layers. I've used a butter cake recipe to put it together. I made a very simple buttercream that I mixed half butter, half shortening, so it was spreadable and easy to work with. There's a rhubarb vanilla bean filling throughout the whole cake. Every layer is iced, every layer has syrup. This will be a very tasty cake for something that looks completely professional.